and so forth. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm looking forward to the recordings because I've been so busy. I haven't been able to really tune in very much. And tomorrow's another busy day, but yeah.
Yeah, no, actually they've been, it started out great this morning. We had Massimo with Porca Pizza from Italy, and it was a wonderful way to
I
start the
love
day.
that guy.
He's crazy. He's great.
I
And he
have
had
him
us-
on my YouTube page or my Facebook page.
You do? And I love the fact his mother joined in too. So
Oh,
that's great.
that's going to be so nice to see.
But Cynthia, welcome.
Thank you.
I had told.
Thank you so much for having me.
No. It's actually what Cynthia's going to talk about today too is something that a lot of the makers we had been talking to said in the beginning when we were designing this, like, gosh, wouldn't it be great if we could all jam together and play? And people threw out names of different things, and someone threw out Jacktrip.
Yeah.
And then Sasha from Sasha Lehman, I believe, from who's down in Australia now, but was at CCRMA, said Jacktrip. It's Jacktrip. And so, and magically, and this is what's wonderful about the maker world, we connected, and you've so graciously offered to give us a workshop tutorial today, and I will turn it over to you.
Great. Is my audio okay?
How is it's good to me. Anyone else? Good, too low, too high?
Okay.
Great. Mitch says it's good. It's good.
Thank you, Thaddeus. Appreciate the feedback. And just so you know, please feel free to use the reactions button, use the chat, and thank you, Shadow Man. I can't see all of you in one screen, but if you're making gestures, I really appreciate it. And I hope that you'll also, okay, good. I'm looking at the chat, like sort of while I'm going, and I'm also going to keep an eye on the time. You'll hear my timer going off because there's an awful lot to cover. And I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. I just want to, first of all, thank the Maker Music Festival, Such and Sherry, who have worked so hard to make this happen. And then, of course, Doja from Karma posted the original notice that this was happening. So really much appreciation to them. As an intro to me, I came into this world singing, and that's what my mom told me. I've gotten into improvisation. I love to question and do research. I know some guitar and some keyboards. I'm obsessed with synthesizers, if I can say it. I'm a synthesizer sympathizer. And I love to experiment, and I love to do research and communicate and network. And I absolutely love found art and painting with light and nature and so many things I love. Check out my LinkedIn for detailed history. But basically, I've been doing Jacktrip for over 15 years now, and as a performer and as a researcher, and now as an instructor, we're teaching Jacktrip certification classes and programs. So check that out too. I absolutely adore this Jacktrip community, and I really am living my best life because of the effects of the pandemic. I got laid off, and when I did, I joined Chris Chafe's Karma classes, and it's just, been growing and growing ever since. Quickly, Jacktrip was originally created as a research tool by a number of people, but mainly two of my cherished mentors, Chris Chafe and Juan-Pablo Caceres, out of Karma. And along with Pauline Oliveros and others who've mentored me over the past 20 years, Jacktrip has germinated in a grassroots volunteer-based community. Then about 14 months ago, what had been a kind of low-key development pace, mainly in the academic communities, Jacktrip suddenly became a critical need for everyone. Everyone in the community went into high gear. And that's because people wanted to keep singing and playing together. So in September then, the Jacktrip Foundation was formed and began producing this little hardware device. It's called a virtual studio. And I don't know if you can see that okay. I'm going to pull up the chat here. Everything okay? Oh, thank you for posting my LinkedIn. I appreciate that. So I'm going to look at the chat over on that side. And you can see that okay. So they started producing these devices. These take the place of the original Jacktrip command line software. Now, you still can use that, and that's what I'm going to focus on today is the command line Jacktrip version. But this little box here runs Jacktrip with an SD card that goes in right there. And you can buy these, and you can buy the SD cards online. You can also get a Raspberry Pi device, and I got mine from Adafruit, and it also runs an SD card loaded with Jacktrip. So I'll go more into this a little bit later. But let's see. So I told you that the virtual studio, now they have Jacktrip Labs, which is going to continue to develop that little hardware box, and has taken over the development of it along with Karma. That's the Center for Research in Music and Acoustics, and then also the NowNet Arts Foundation, also partnering with the Jacktrip Foundation to do this Jacktrip certification program. So at the core of all this is a name I mentioned, Chris Chafe, and the Karma community. They're the hub servers, if you will, along with a wonderful community of Jacktrip developers and users. And we really have gone crazy since March of last year. So let's see. Any questions yet? I'm going to just keep on going. All right. So as I mentioned, there are different ways of connecting on Jacktrip now. And let me pull up this photo. Oops, that's not the one. Oh, I think I'm gonna share my screen first. So back to meeting, share screen. There. Okay. And then those are those. And here is some photos. Let's see if that's coming up. My preview. So there's Chris on the left, and me and Alex Carreau at the AES Festival. I've done 3 maker fairs, and these were all in Kansas City. So there's me at the maker fair in Kansas City, just to show you some pictures. This is the Kansas City hacker community. I went to Kansas City to try to tell them all about Jacktrip. I stayed there for 3.5 years and did a lot of good outreach and had a real good time. And they put us in the Fast Company magazine. As I was saying, I love found art. This was some found art I found. This looks like there's a face, but it's actually 2 cars and a trash can. Some more found art. This is some photographs I'm taking with some different lighting techniques. So I thought I had a picture in here that I wanted to show you, but maybe not. Let me go back to my document. All right. So, I wanted to explain the server client architecture of Jacktrip. And that is, let's see. Sorry, I thought I had that up handy for myself, but let's see. Here we go. This is what I want to show you. There we go. So on the left side is our typical Jacktrip peer-to-peer architecture. So there's one member of the group sets themselves up as a Jacktrip server. And then everybody else is a client that connects to the Jacktrip server. And this would be run, sort of locally. The person who runs the server also becomes a client. And then we have, on a remote server architecture, we can use the Jacktrip servers, which I'll show you in a minute. And we can also connect to those managed servers a virtual studio device or a Raspberry Pi device. And we can also use the IP address of that server to use in our command line if we want to run the old school version, the command line, what we call the command line version of Jacktrip. And that just all gets run in a terminal on the Mac or in a command window on Windows. And then if you wanted to create an unmanaged server portal so that Virtual Studio users could connect on the jacktrip.org website with the servers there, you would just type in the address of whatever the server you had, whether it be on the Jacktrip or on the Linode or AWS or wherever it is. Today, I created an unmanaged server with the IP address of a server at Karma. And if I can get through all of this and anyone is ready, we can connect to that server. So Jacktrip, as I said, server client architecture. Jacktrip servers can be run locally on a computer or accessed remotely. Remote Jacktrip servers that are going to be offsite in the cloud can be accessed by the command line version of Jacktrip, as well as the Virtual Studio devices or Raspberry Pi devices that are running Jacktrip on an SD card. So I'll get out of that one and go back to my document here to tell. Okay, stop and ask, it says. So let me stop and ask, has anybody got the server downloaded or installed? Anybody at all? Put it in the chat if you do have the... Nobody has the software installed. Okay, so we won't try to do a jam right now. We'll wait for that. We'll wait for y'all to get the software and install it. Okay, so let's see here. Oh, Mark, you have it installed. Fantastic. So maybe you'll be our guinea pig. Oh, okay, great. Thaddeus, okay. Thaddeus has Jack installed, but not Jacktrip yet. Okay, and Tom Bickley has. Okay, great. Thanks, Tom, for coming. Thank you so much. So, all right. Well, those three will be good to start us out. So let me get through this continuation of my talk here. I'm going to cover mainly the command line procedures, as I said, and maybe throw in a bit about the servers on the Foundation website and so forth. But first, I want to explain that Jack and Jacktrip are two separate programs. They're installed separately. Jacktrip runs in the background on top of Jack. So the Jack settings are really, really important. And the order of operations of using Jacktrip is really, really important. The command line version now. I'm teaching you the old school way. So, you can certainly get a Jacktrip device or a Raspberry Pi device and you'll be able to skip this whole piece. But I think it's a good thing for makers to know this part because, you're makers after all. You want to know how it's all working, right? So you would install Jack first and then Jacktrip. You won't see a Jacktrip interface like you will for Jack because Jacktrip gets launched from the terminal window or the command window. Okay, Are we clear? Okay. Nobody's like fainted yet. So here is a list of best practices. Clear, glad. Thank you, Thaddeus. I really appreciate that. So I want to go over these best practices because it's really important that you know these things before you start Jacktrip, before you try to do a session. First of all, be very careful with download links. Make sure that you're clicking on the right link that gets you to the software. The only one that I've really seen there was a problem with was the Audio for All, and that's for the Windows users. The Windows users have to run an Audio device, and you can either run Audio for All, or you can go to the manufacturer's website of your sound device, your sound interface, audio interface, like Scarlett or Behringer or whatever it may be. Focusrite, I think, is the Scarlett. And download their Audio device for their piece of equipment. Because Audio for All will not work with those if those devices have their own. Okay, so also I want to say allow yourself 2 to 3 more times the amount of time you think it's going to take to set everything up. Just be ready like half an hour before you're actually supposed to launch Jacktrip. And that's because you need to be able to troubleshoot some stuff, okay? Now, turn off all noisy appliances. This is really important, especially when you're recording. Like I have an incredibly noisy refrigerator. Shh, don't say anything, because if it hears me talking, it'll start making noise. And I'll go have to run and turn it off. But you get what I'm saying, right? And then I want to say too that Ethernet cables are really fragile. So don't bend them, don't twist them, don't run over them with a chair or pinch them or anything. Just be very, very careful with Ethernet cables. Turn off your Wi-Fi because it can disable it, because it can interfere with your Ethernet. And you know, we're really wanting to get that wired connection that helps with latency, it helps with sound quality and everything. You just want to do everything you can to save on bandwidth and give it all to Jacktrip. You know, go door to door to your neighbors and tell them, hey, stay off the internet because I'm going to use Jacktrip. No, I'm just kidding. That's a joke. I wouldn't do that unless you have, you know, Bruno with you or something like that. You know, but sometimes the internet traffic in the neighborhood can be really difficult to try to get people to not use, but you know, you of course don't want to do that. So then let's see, this is a big one. I have coached so many people and they show up and they have so many tabs open that I can barely see the tabs in their screen. Oh my goodness. Each one of those tabs takes up resources. So bookmark those puppies and close all those tabs. Just have Jack and Jacktrip, and if you're using Zoom, you know, just what you need. All right. And if you don't need startup apps that start when you start your computer, if you don't need them, make it so that those apps go away. They don't start when you start Jacktrip unless you absolutely need those apps. So go to startup apps, and that's another way to really speed up your computer. If you have apps running on the desktop, that is really going to slow your computer down. So move those apps off into the applications or program files folders. Keep your screen nice and clear. Keep your bookmarks or your tabs closed. You know, just have what you absolutely need. Do you really need to have that thing running? If not, close it. Now, here's another big one. Edit your power settings so that your hard drive and your display do not go to sleep. And this is because during a session, you know, we're playing our instruments, we're singing, we're not touching the keyboard. And then your computer decides, oh, you don't want me anymore, so I'm going to take a nap. Well, you can change that. You do not want your hard drive or your display to go to sleep during your session. That would be bad. I already said disable Wi-Fi. Oh, do a speedtest.net. When you do a speedtest.net, you get your public IP address, you get your upload speed, your download speed, and your ping time. Write all those things down. In fact, get yourself a Jacktrip notebook so you can write all these things down. It's really, really important to be able to have things at your fingertips. Write down your router information, your login information, all that stuff, okay? Are you still with me? We're getting into some heavy stuff now, so I want to make sure everybody's good to go. I'm looking at the chat. Everybody good? Okay. Here we go. We're getting into heavy territory here. Firewalls. Firewalls will kill your Jacktrip session before you even connect with anybody. Add Jacktrip to your computer firewall. Add the app Jacktrip, the path for it, and you can online search for any of these things that I'm talking about to get more instructions. Okay. Also, add an app to your router firewall, and add Jacktrip to any third-party security, McAfee, Kaspersky, Norton, any of those third-party. Now, there's sometimes when people try to use their work computer and it's so loaded with security, nobody's going to get Jacktrip running on that thing. So just beware that if you have a computer that's being admin by somebody else or a corporation or something like that, you would not have permission. Neither would any Jacktrip coach or anybody have permission to change those settings. Okay. Mac users, go to your privacy connection or your privacy settings and enable the microphone, give Jacktrip permission. Windows users, this is a big one for Windows users. So here we go. Disable exclusive mode on your audio devices. And that is in the sound control panel. You have a playback tab and a recording tab. You click on the device, you click on playback tab, you click on the device, you click properties, you click advanced, uncheck the box that says to give apps exclusive control. If you don't uncheck that box, you will not be able to share your audio devices with different applications. And typically people are running Jacktrip, Zoom, other stuff with audio, maybe a DAW or two. So be sure, and Windows users, disable exclusive mode. You need to do it for your playback and your recording devices, any of them that you want to use. If you have virtual cables that you're using, you need to do it for your virtual cables too. Okay. Can you please repeat how to find exclusive mode? Yes. Sound control panel. Let's see. Let me just actually show you. I've got my Windows machine going here too. And I'm going to share my screen on the Windows machine. Okay. And are we seeing it? So that's, let's see. I hear that refrigerator going. Okay, so I think what you can do is, I do not see my screen. Do you guys don't see my screen either, do you?
We see your Windows settings panel.
What was that?
We see your Windows settings panel.
You do see them? Okay.
Yeah, we see your screen.
Okay. I don't know why I don't see it, but anyway, okay. Maybe because I'm sharing on this machine. Any case, so what I did there is I right clicked on my little speaker icon down there. I went to open sound settings, and then I go here to sound control panel. You see that? And then here are the playback and the recording tab. I go to playback. I'm using my Behringer. I go down here to properties. I go to advanced. And here's that bugger right there. Exclusive mode. If I had that checked, I would be in big trouble. Okay. And then of course, save it. So you want to definitely say okay or apply. And then you do the same thing for every single one of the sound devices that you're going to want to use. Then go to the recording tab, do the same thing. Properties, advanced, and uncheck that box. And then apply, okay, okay, and then we're done. How's that? Is that good? Great. Yes, Jacktrip does play nice with Black Hole, and that's kind of an advanced setting. So the good thing about Black Hole is you can use it to get on a Mac, of course, because can't get Black Hole for Windows yet. They're working on it. But you can send Jacktrip to Zoom. One person in your session would take Black Hole channel 3 and 4 and in Jack, and I'll show you that in a minute, and send it over to Zoom. And in Zoom, your input would be Black Hole. So I'll show you that in a sec. Okay, so that's for Windows. I always feel sorry for Windows people because there aren't many people using Jacktrip on Windows, but there are a lot of people who want to. So we'll try to cover that as much as we can. All right, so now let's go ahead and I'm going to stop sharing this screen. Oh, I already did. Okay. Thaddeus, you've used this with Jacktrip, but this saved me for your performance today. Oh, voice meter, yeah. Voice meter's a little complicated. Yeah.
I have not used it with Jacktrip, but that saves me for audio routing.
Yeah. It takes a while to figure out voice meter.
Yeah, it's a little complicated, but very helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, we're doing pretty good actually. Are people getting this okay? Any other sort of questions before I start plugging stuff in, showing you that? Okay. All right, good. Okay, so now we start plugging stuff in. So all that stuff we did all that stuff before we even plugged in our anything. So it's really good to have a clean boot if you can do that when you start plugging stuff in. That's really good. And remember, order of operations is going to make or break your successful connection. All right. So plug in your USB device to your computer. Immediately go and plug in your mics and your instruments and go to audio MIDI for the Mac users and go to sound settings for the Windows users. And let me show you audio MIDI. And I will go over here first, back to meeting, share my screen. And here we go, audio MIDI. Close that. So this is audio MIDI for the Mac users. And what I've done is I've created an aggregate device, what's called an aggregate device. And you can do that by clicking this plus sign down here, create aggregate device. What this does is it groups all of your sound devices into one place. And this way you can enable them to use them all at once. And you can make different aggregate devices and you can rename them. You can call them different things. Like I could have called this MMF or Maker Music Festival configuration or whatever it may be. So the first thing you do, you make sure that your main audio interface is at the top of the list and it's checked. And then you want to go to, and I'm going to be using Black Hole, so I've got Black Hole checked too. So then you go to your, down here, and you say, use this device for sound input. And you know how I know that it's already enabled? Because the little microphone icon is sitting there. If the microphone icon was up here on built-in mic, that's the input device that would be active. This is so important. I can't tell you how many times that I myself have connected and gone, oh, wait, what's going on? Well, I forget to go to audio MIDI. And in the time between I made this device and I connected, I unplugged my Scarlett and then it lost that connection. So you have to go back. You do the same thing for your output. You say, use this device for output. And then you make sure that the little speaker icon is on the aggregate device. If it was on anything else, built in or anything, that's the device that would be active for output. Now, this little icon here is for system sounds. So if any system sounds were to be heard, it would be heard on my built-in speakers, my built-in output. That's where those sounds would be. I could put that down on the aggregate device too by saying play alerts and sound effects through this device. But and then I'd have to, of course, enable built-in output for it to be heard. Okay, really, really important. So I'm going to stop sharing this and I'm going to go over to the Windows sound settings. Let's see. Oh, drift connection, Tom. Yeah, I don't mess with drift correction very much. Drift correction is only for devices that have a clock, right? So your external audio device does have a clock, and yeah, it could help keep it straight with your computer. Let me just share again so you can see that. So he's talking about this drift correction here. And what that does is it just makes sure that your Scarlett or your audio interface that you're using, and again, that always has to be at the top of your list, is going to stay with your computer clock source. But see, I have clock sources set at for my Scarlett here. So I don't know. Anyway, I just never use it. I know that people do, and I'm just not sure what circumstances that. You can try it. A lot of Jacktrip is really experimental, and you got to try stuff to see if it's actually going to work for you, right? Let's see. Any other questions before I go forward? I'm going to go over here to my Windows machine. And I'm going to share my Windows machine. So, okay, there's my desktop. All right. So now you're going to go to sound settings, and that was a right click on the little speaker icon and then sound settings. And I have a number of devices I could choose. I'm using my Behringer, so I've chosen my Behringer. Same with the input. I've got my Behringer chosen there. So that's kind of it with Windows. It's a little more straightforward. And of course, if you wanted to go to your sound control panel and make sure that your exclusive mode has been disabled. Microphone privacy in Windows. You definitely want to make sure that the apps that you want to use have access to your microphone. So Jack D is the engine for Jack. So you want to make sure that you've got Jack D in there. And I think that's all. I don't think Jacktrip doesn't show up in there, but on the Mac, I'll just go back to the Mac and show you privacy settings on the Mac. Let's see. Let's see. I don't know. Let's see. System preferences. It's so hard to share and use these. Okay, here we are. Privacy. And then click over here on microphone and see Jack DMP. I've got it in there as being enabled. That's Jack D, another name for Jack D. And then QJack CTL is the part of Jack that lets you mix. And also it's the transport box, which I'll show you in a minute. And all of these apps are apps that use my microphone. QJack CTL. Jacktrip is another app. It's the interface. It's an interface for Jacktrip that you can use. So yeah, make sure that you've got your privacy settings in both Mac and Windows enabled for the apps that you want to use. Okay, how we doing? Everybody still here? Yeah? Okay. So now, let's see. We've got, oh, I want to tell you about the 10-second rule. The 10-second rule is the amount of time that it takes between the time you disconnect from a Jacktrip connection and the time you reconnect to that same connection that you had. And that's because sometimes we disconnect and reconnect to change settings. And if you don't wait at least 10 seconds, you just reconnect on the settings you had before. So just take a breath, count to 10, and then reconnect, because by then the server will have dropped your connection and you can reconnect with the new settings. Okay, and I'll say that again a little bit later. All right, shall we go to the Jack connection? All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Jack is running, but I don't see it in the privacy settings. Mark, let's go through these settings, because it's possible that are you on Mac or Windows? Okay. Well, Mac. Okay. All right. So on Mac, maybe when you start Jacktrip, it will ask you for permission. So sometimes Jack or Jacktrip will ask you for permission to access your mic. And when you do that, it will automatically put it in there. So that's just something to check. So let's see. Share my screen. So here we go. Oh, need this down here. I gotta stop sharing for a second. Pull this down. Good. Okay. So this little transport here on the left is Jack. And if you didn't already download and install the software, the links and the instructions are all on the Maker Music Festival scheduling website. And what I would do is just make a cut and paste that whole section under my name and save it to your computer so you have access to it. Okay. I think that would be a good practice. Let me see the chat here. Okay. So here's the Jack setup. And this is Mac. We'll go to Windows in a second. So for Jack setup, this is the interface that you want to choose, your external audio interface. Remember, I made the aggregate device, so that's what I'm going to choose is my aggregate device. Now, because I chose it in the audio MIDI section settings, technically it's my default. So I could also say default there. But I like to choose exactly what it is. I need a sip of water. Excuse me. So, and I just got it all over my glasses. There are two settings in Jacktrip, whether you're on Mac or PC, that need to match. Everybody needs to match these two settings. You need to match them in Jack. And you need to make sure your audio MIDI has the same sample rate. We usually use 48K. And we also need to match our frames per period. We also call this buffer size. Yeah, I know this says periods buffer, but frames and buffer are used interchangeably in Jacktrip. So sorry about the confusion, but just know that frames per period is also referred to as buffer size. And the frames per period is going to allow you to lower the frames per period in order to get better latency, lower latency. If you don't have internet that can support lower latency, you can raise that frames per period. I wouldn't go past 512. But you can do 512, and then you are giving the data more time in bigger chunks to get through your internet rather than faster and smaller chunks, if that makes sense. Okay. Just know that these two have to match in Jack, and everybody in the connection, all the people that want to connect to the same server, because the server is also going to have these. And so really the server is the place, the connection that sets the sample rate and frames per period, what that should be for everybody. But then you have to make sure that your equipment is also doing that, right? Your driver, when you first open Jack, your driver is maybe going to say ALSA because it was developed by Linux programmers. And so it kind of defaults to ALSA. But you want it to say core audio. You want real time to be checked. And really, these other settings we don't really use. The only other setting maybe that I would use would be the channels. And that's, you usually do 2 channels is the default for Jacktrip. And the input channels need to match. Everybody needs to match the same number of input channels, because if somebody puts in 4 and somebody else puts in 1, Jacktrip will default to the lowest number of channels in the settings. Now, the developers are working on this right now so that everybody can have different numbers of channels in and out. And the output channels, so this is the input side, this is the output side. And the reason that I have more in the output side is, first of all, the output channels don't need to match. Just the input channels are really the critical one. I put 4 here because I use 3 and 4 for Black Hole to send Black Hole, send Jacktrip audio through Black Hole virtual cables to Zoom. And then in Zoom, I choose as my input device Black Hole. Now, I'll show you that. I'll show you more about that in a minute. But just let me put this bug in your ear. Channels 3 and 4 in Jack correspond to channels 1 and 2 in Black Hole. And why is that? It's because channels 1 and 2 are always going to be your external audio interface. Your mic is going to be on 1 and 2, I don't know, whatever you want to put into. So Black Hole starts on 3 in your audio MIDI settings and in Jack, but technically it's 1 and 2 of Black Hole. Okay, so you just have to kind of shift over. All right, everybody still with me? Good. All right, fantastic. All right, so I think we have Jack set up. Oh, this is really important too. The server prefix on the advanced tab in the Mac version, this needs to be the path, because this is where Jack D lives, and this is the engine to run Jack. Remember, Jack and Jacktrip are two separate applications. Jack processes all the audio in your computer and what's going into your computer. There really was a fly there, I swear. And Jacktrip, it hands it over to Jacktrip to send it out to the net and bring it back in as fast as it can. So Jacktrip technically doesn't process the audio. Jack processes the audio that is being put into your computer from your USB device and then hands it off to Jacktrip. So Jacktrip runs in the background. And I'll show you that in a minute. So remember, this needs to be the path, or wherever Jack D is living. That's where this path needs to be. And then, of course, if you make any differences in the settings, you need to press OK. But I'm going to press cancel. And then let's go over to the Windows machine. Stop. And I can show you Jack on the Windows machine. Okay. So here's Jack on the Windows machine. I'm going to close this one, close that one. Just want to make sure that I didn't miss anybody's question. Okay, we're good. So here's Jack, the Jack settings on the Windows machine. You go to Setup, and you do this every single time you do a session. Every single time. There's just, it's a Zen thing. You just have to do these things every time just to make sure that they're running correctly. So here's the interface. I mean, it looks a lot like the Mac, but there's a couple more things you do. So here's the Windows. I have already chosen my Behringer Osio driver. I've chosen the 48,000 sample rate. I've got the frames per period at the same as the Mac, same as everybody else. Now here, the driver is going to be port audio rather than core audio, okay? And the real-time box is checked. And then go over to the advanced tab, and then this should be a default setting in the Windows version of Jack. This is what I have, and this came when I upgraded to the latest Jack version. So I think that this will be also in when you install it too. Now for Windows, it's a little bit different. Mac is much better. If at all possible, you can use a Mac for Jacktrip. I think it will just be a much better experience. There's so many hoops you have to jump through to get Jacktrip on a Windows machine over to Zoom. It's really a lot of trouble where it's so super simple with Jack or with Mac. but I just have 2 channels in and 2 channels out for the Windows version. Okay. And then you would say, okay, for that. And then I'm going to go ahead and start my jack on the Windows machine. Now, jack, when you go to the jack setup, a lot of times, and then you try to start jack, it will throw an error at you because it doesn't, you've been in the setup and it gets a little, so don't worry about it. Don't like have to go through I know I said read everything, but don't, just cancel this and try again. See, this time it started. And how do I know it started? Because I have the system on the left is the output ports. The system on the right are the input ports. And this is output to Jacktrip, input to Jacktrip, okay? Or jack. Capture 1 is always going to be my microphone. And if I go system to system and I press connect to test it, and then I test my microphone, I should be able to hear myself in my headphones. And then you disconnect. That's just to test and make sure that your microphone is connected the way you want it to be. So now Jack is running on my Windows machine. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to go back over to the Mac. I'm going to go to the Jack setup the the Jack QJack CTL transport here. I'm going to start. And of course, on the Mac, Jack starts right up, goes system to system, click connect, and I can hear myself right now. I don't know if you hear me kind of twice now, but that's because I can hear myself in the headphones. This has enabled my sound system as I have it set up. And you see I have these 2 extra channels here. So I'm going to disconnect. And now we're ready for Jacktrip. So on the Mac, we open a terminal window. And on the Mac, it defaults to, I wasn't sharing there. I'm sorry. I am very sorry. Feel free to speak up if if I've forgotten to do something. All right, let me run through that again, all right? So here we are in the Jack Audio Connection Kit. We've made sure that our settings are correct. We go to the Start button. There we go, and it starts up automatically. On the Mac, it's super easy. Go system to system. We click connect. And now, as I said, I can hear myself in my headphones because I have activated my audio device that is talking to Jack. So Jack and my audio device, I know, are in contact with one another. If they weren't, I would have to figure out why, because as I said, Jacktrip runs on top of Jack. So now we're ready for Jacktrip. And when you install Jacktrip on the Mac, it is hard-coded that it will start from any folder, any directory. But in the Windows version, you have to manually navigate to the folder where Jacktrip is living. And it's usually in the Downloads folder. And you can move it out to wherever you want to start Jacktrip from. But I'll show you that in a second. It's a little bit more doing. So here we're going to go, Jacktrip dash big C. Big C means that we're connecting to a remote hub server. And if we were connecting in a peer-to-peer connection, where one of our other bandmates was just running a Jacktrip server on his or her computer, then they would then everyone would put lowercase c. So it's Jacktrip space -c uppercase C, and then here's the address of the server at Karma where I'm going to connect to. And it's mmf21.stanford.edu. And I'm going to connect. And now I have received a connection from peer, as you can see right here. If you get this message, it means you have a connection. And as you can see, this is the Jack audio connections window. mmf21.stanford.edu is connected to my system. My microphone, Capture One, is being sent to the server at Stanford. The server at Stanford is receiving my microphone and playing it back to me. Now, the way this is set up right now, my microphone is only one channel. I could do one of two things. I could either send my microphone to both channels to have stereo, because I don't have anything in my second channel. This is going red. Am I like really overamping? Or you on the other end could take your receive channel and send it to the other side of your headphones. So now it's a stereo. Is that making sense? Let me check the chat. Okay. TCP socket error, host not found. Put the command line that you typed in the chat. Oh, it's mmf21. That's why. It's mmf21.stanford.edu. Control C to stop the connection in Jacktrip. Control C, just like that. And then it's mmf21.stanford.edu. Okay, and now I've received connection. And don't forget about the 10-second rule, otherwise you'll just have the same problem. All right, let's quickly go to the Windows side. I'm going to stop sharing this one. We'll go to the Windows. Yes, thank you, Mark. Thank you for putting that in there. I would just Control C out of your Jacktrip window. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Hold on. Okay. And now I'm going to open up what's called the command window, command prompt in Windows. Okay. Now remember I said that in the Windows version, you have to navigate to the folder where Jacktrip is living. So I put Jacktrip in my Jack2 folder just to make it easier to find. But when you first open a command window, you might get something like this, you know, or whatever your computer's called. So what you do is you do cd space / that takes you to your root directory. Then you do cd program files / jack2. That's where my Jacktrip file is living. All of a sudden I hear, oh, someone's connected. Ah, I think I can hear someone trying to connect. Okay, so now I'm going to say Jacktrip, because Jacktrip lives in this folder. So now I can say Jacktrip - uppercase C mmf21.stanford.edu. And now I'm connected on both machines. I'm connected on my Windows. Oh, no, you know why? I have to do what's called a port offset or a bind port in order to connect two machines on the same IP address. So let me do that real quick. So I go here and I say B 4484. Okay, so now I'm actually connected on both machines. Okay, Mark, you opened a new terminal window and then it worked. Yeah, sometimes you probably just didn't wait long enough for the server to drop what you were trying to do. So good. Thaddeus, you can't ping the server, so it's probably a network issue on your side. Yeah. Yeah, that can get kind of hairy, I'm afraid. So I don't know. You know, I really want to do another workshop where I can really get into these things a little bit more. And I think that it would be really, really fun if people would contact me, let me know that you've got the stuff installed. You know, we can maybe do some troubleshooting over the phone or over Zoom. And there's also, you know, like I was saying, there are free servers available that you can create on the jacktrip.org website. You just create an account and you can, you know, get some servers there. Actually, I think I maybe have a few minutes to just show you that real quick.
Yeah, and Cynthia, you know, we're gonna do a debrief with and you're certainly you're invited to
Oh,
with
great.
all the participants next Sunday.
Oh, nice.
And so we can actually see if there's a group of people that want to take this further.
I would love.
I bet there will be.
I would love to do that. I could
Okay.
cover the the foundation servers. I
Yeah.
could cover the you know, getting Jacktrip over to Zoom, and I could also probably do a little bit about sending Zoom and Jacktrip to OBS and then streaming from
Yeah.
OBS. So
That would be great.
It's kind of a big deal. But
Cool. So we'll figure that. Well, I definitely think we should do that. I think there's enough interest.
Great. Should I quickly show you the foundation?
Sure. I mean, if long as people want to stay, that's cool.
Okay.
You still have
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I created another Zoom meeting in case people want to continue. I'm
Okay.
available for another hour or so. I could continue over on Zoom or another time, whatever. You know, I mean, just let me know if people want to continue.
So it's 4:24 now. How are people
Okay.
feeling? I know for some it's been a long day. I would
Yes.
I would
Oh
say
my
if you
God.
want to, maybe like the folks that want to continue, maybe if you've got another server or another Zoom connect, maybe
I
that's
do
cool.
have another Zoom, absolutely.
And then yeah.
Quickly for people who are still here, I know, you know, you're super tired and everything, but please, here's the Jacktrip, the help. It's help.jacktrip.org. You can go there. You can also go to the app.jacktrip.org, and you can create a server here, either a managed server or an unmanaged server, and you can use the IP address of your server. Like right here, I made an unmanaged server for the virtual studio device. People can connect. This is a portal to that server that they can connect to. I also have created a managed server, and pretty much once I start this, it takes a couple minutes for it to start, but once it starts, over here, there will be an IP address that people can connect to with the command line version of Jacktrip. So if someone didn't have a server, you could still use the command line version with this server. So yeah, I know it's a lot, and I so much appreciate everyone who's here, and I really just want to thank you all. Shall I put the Zoom in?
Yeah, you know.
Okay,
absolutely.
yeah, I do. Let me do that real quick.
And then you can see if anyone shows up. That would be great. It's awesome to have you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
I
I know
really
it's
good.
kind of off the sort of maker image, but it's
No,
certainly
no. It's like I said, everyone was, people
Yeah.
wanted to jam together. So this is, it would be great to
yeah,
figure it out.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm gonna put this whole thing.
Yeah, it looks like a few people are leaving, and I know our friends in Europe
Oh
that,
yeah.
that have been up for a long, plus
Oh,
9
I'm sure. Yes.
from California.
There we go. All right. There's all the Zoom info.
Great.
And there's down here the Jacktrip server and command line information. So, yay! I did it!
Excellent.
You did it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Well,
Thank you, Such. Thank
this
you,
is-
Sherry.
It's an important technology for this audience, so I'm very thankful for you
Yeah,
to spend the
yeah.
time.
I'm
Thank
so
you.
glad. I'm so glad.
Thank you guys. Thanks
Hi,
everyone.
DVB. I have to give a shout out to my buddy,
Who's your buddy?
David Van Brink.
Excellent.
Hi.
Yeah. So great. Yeah,
Excellent.
David has been a great friend to me. I really appreciate it.
Cool.
Oh, you look good.
No, great to see you.